It looked like studio football because they played in the Cotton Bowl, and what few people were in the stadium had all retreated up under the decks.
So when we ran out on the field, you couldn't see anybody. And Meredith said, well, it's finally happened. And I said, what? He said, nobody bought a ticket.
Meredith, who signed a personal services contract with Clint Murchison before the team existed, is often portrayed as a happy-go-lucky loser. In truth, players say he is a respected leader to this day, and perhaps the finest quarterback to wear the silver and blue.
I don't like him. I just only love him because he's the best.
I think that's absolutely true, and I think we all feel that he was probably the most talented quarterback we've had.
I think of Don Meredith, I can see him getting hit and throwing the ball just as he's getting hit and knocked backwards. And I remember thinking for the years that I watched him play and broadcast the games that he was playing, this has got to be the toughest guy that I've ever known in my life.
Leon Donahue was the guard, and he missed a guy. And I will remember it forever, he came back and he picked me up and he was crying. And he's Danny, I'm so sorry. I missed him.
40 years after the fact, the Landry mystique is redefined by former players who say he often miscalled plays and placed much of the blame for the team's performance on Meredith's shoulders.
Coach Landry was very pointed in his criticism. It was always somebody else's fault, and he was easy to point out whose fault it was, and it was primarily Don's. I think I was around him for his 29 years, and I never heard him say he called a bad play or had a bad game plan.
Another Landry myth is his stoic nature. Carved in granite, he is seen as cold and unmoving. The rift between himself and Meredith was partially resolved after another disappointing loss, when Landry showed a side of his personality few had seen before or since.
He said, I feel that I've let you all down. And he said, and then he started weeping. And then he said, I probably won't be around next year. But he said, I do. I just want to tell you all how much I think of you and how much I appreciate your effort. And I don't know, it did something to us. It was like he just touched something that, like pressing that button for overdrive, you know, you got an extra 5% in there, well, you just give that extra 5% that maybe we had been holding back.
You always remember something like that. It's a real wonderful to see someone, you know, react to that way, because they were sincere, you know, they were good, they were friends of mine. Even though that I had that division, you know, they were still friends of mine, and it made all the difference in the world.
I probably expected too much of him. I'm from a very small town, and from very early on, coaches become like father figures, and you look to them for things like that. And there were a few times in my life and in my career when I was there that some fairly severe things happened to me personally. And if I have a disappointment, I feel like that there were a couple of times when it was my fault, putting maybe too much pressure, too much emphasis, that maybe I was looking for him to flip the light on for me. And he was not able to do that.
8 years of disappointment forced Meredith from the game in 1969 after just 9 seasons. He was only 30, but he left behind a lifetime worth of stories.
You know, Meredith, I said, this bothered me, but I said, you picked up the whole tab. And I said, that's $400, you know. He said, well, I made $200. I said, what do you mean you made $200? He said, we had $600 worth of fun, didn't we? And he would be whistling. Don, what do you think? Off tackle? Yeah. Okay, let's go. And everybody would be loose, you know. That's just the way he kind of played quarterback, and fun to play with.
Losing Super Bowl V against Baltimore further cemented Dallas's label as chokers. Off the field, the team and the city were still trying to regain a sense of pride after the events of November 22nd, 1963.
It was very somber. In fact, that's all we heard about for quite some time, but The game went out the window. I mean, as far as we were concerned, we quit worrying about the game. I think we all did a little soul searching.
Just totally shocked that it could happen in Dallas, Texas, or anywhere else, you know, but really shocked it could happen in Dallas.
We were sending some suitcases back to West Virginia, and the man saw that I was from Dallas, Texas, and he said, I don't know if I want to ship those for you or not.
We could tell no one wanted us around, and when we were out on the field, I don't know about my teammates, I was apprehensive about going on the field and getting shot.
How you express the feeling, the dejection, you know, it's like, I wish I had never played this game. I wish I had never even set foot on a hill because it hurts big time.
It would be several years before Dallas and the Cowboys would overcome the events of that day. The debate over the value of sports in our daily lives is ongoing, but there is no question of the important role that the Cowboys would play in the 70s of reinventing the image of Dallas as a comeback city. George Reba, Channel 8 Sports.
Don Meredith got a bad rap in Dallas. He was a very good quarterback who just came along at the wrong time. Don Meredith said what he thought, and what he thought got him in trouble. He liked to drink, he liked to party and stay out late, but no one played harder, showed more courage, and took more abuse than Don Meredith. He was Mickey Mantle in silver and blue. He's in the Ring of Honor, but a lot of Cowboys fans have forgotten Dandy Don, and that's too bad, because I think he and I would have had a good time together. The 70s are next.
Pat Summerall said over the loudspeaker in the Superdome, he says, folks, today is history. We have two most valuable players. We have co-most valuable players. I'm standing on the field. I went, well, why, who is that? And he says, Randy White and Harvey Martin. And I just lost it. I went, oh, my God.
The other team would be coming up to the line of scrimmage, and Harvey and I'd be yelling at each other over a stunt that he didn't run right or I didn't run right, and the opposing team, I thought, you know, they come up to the line sometimes and look at us, didn't even get down their stance, they're looking at us fight with each other.
No one knows exactly when the Dallas Cowboys became the New York Yankees of the NFL, but in the 70s, the Cowboys were hotter than disco, and Dallas finally began to shed the image as a city that killed a president. Much of that newfound respect was because of the popularity of a football team. A football team. Here's Tony Martinez.
Has him in the shotgun formation. Roger takes the snap, pumps it once. He's going long. Down the near sideline for Drew Pearson. Pearson makes the catch at the 5. Touchdown! Pearson goes in for the touchdown.
Great play and a lot of luck, miracle.
By 1975, Tex Schramm's vision of Yankee greatness had come to pass. No team won more games than Dallas in the decade, and the Hail Mary embodied the essence of the Staubach era.
I think it's the biggest play in Cowboy history. When you think of the magnitude of the play and the situation, the playoff situation, being a wild card team, playing in Minnesota.
I closed my eyes and said a Hail Mary, which, you know, I'm a Catholic kid from Cincinnati, Ohio, and said the rosary a few times.
It was like, oh my God, we beat the Vikings. We're going on through the playoffs. I was in shock. I have never felt that good before in my life. Never.
Let's stop them on this third down. Let's give Roger one more chance. And because we did it over and over, and he did it over and over, and get to the point where, you know, we believed it, and so it came true.
Well, we were in the Pro Bowl, and we were losing. Several players came up and said, hey, man. They looked at Coach and said, hey, you guys always win. We're not worried about a thing. We know we're going to win this game. In the last 2 minutes of a game, you Cowboys never lose.
In Super Bowl VI in Miami, after 6 playoff tries, Dallas finally won its first title.
You know, everybody in professional football, their whole ambition is to become a Super Bowl champ. And we've fought a long time, you know, to reach that goal. And once we reached it, then we knew we were a pretty good football team from then on.
People say, well, you were a past world champion. I don't think you're ever a past champion in anything. I think once you're a champion, you're a champion.
While NFL films coined the title America's Team, perception became reality in the 70s because of an electric assortment of personalities and an unprecedented winning streak that lasted 20 years. The Cowboys became the standard by which every sports franchise was judged.
To me, the uniform has a lot to do with it. The star, the helmet.
When they come out of the tunnel, no matter where it is, with that star on the helmet, there's an awe, a feeling of awe. There's an admiration and sometimes a resentment, almost like the Yankees in baseball.
I've always described the Cowboys as a franchise of excessive personalities, extreme losses, extreme victories. It's the wildest ride anybody could imagine.
If the Cowboys-Packers title games represented the 60s, the Cowboys-Redskins rivalry defined the 70s. Fueling pro football's civil war, Redskins head coach George Allen.
Hail to the Redskins! Hail, victory! Roger Staubach is coming! Roger Staubach!
George Allen came in a kung fu outfit, and to address the team. And before he started to address the team, he hit 2 boards. And basically, he said that I wish these pieces of wood were Tom Landry, and I wish we could just take this, me and him, out on the 50-yard line.
You never know when you're going to be surrounded by Redskins. Howdy.
One time we were at a charity event in Freeport in the Bahamas, and Joe would walk around with a gold 7 on his neck, a diamond 7 on his neck, and he'd talk about how tough they were and everything, and I'll never forget. He looked at me one day and said, "Harv, my tackle had a pretty good game against you the last time." I said, "You're just such a, I can't say what I said to him." I said, "I'll see you next time."
He'd be out there. And I looked at him one day, I said, "Harv," I said, "let's play him for a while before we make him mad." I said, "let's not make him mad starting off with."
The Redskins would be bug eyes. Come on, bug eyes. Bug eyes. Bug eyes. It's time for you to drop one.
The Washington Redskins despised the Cowboys, and we felt the same way.
During the 70s, the two teams met 21 times, with the Cowboys winning 12. Perhaps the most unforgettable contest occurred in Roger Staubach's last regular season game in 1979.
Larry Cole's play to drop Riggins behind the line of scrimmage, and I think it was like 3rd and 1 or 2. It was probably the most important play of that game.
It was like the whole crowd tackled me with him, because I never had that kind of spontaneous, cheer from the crowd. I mean, it was just magic. It was just, everybody was tackling with me.
Plus it was the Redskins, and I still saw the film when Riggins is running down the sideline to score. Really like they put the game away, and all the Redskin players over there screaming and hollering.
If you don't enjoy the game and play with heart, there's no need to be out there. And we played with that kind of heart and love for one another, and believed that some great things, that miracles could happen with that guy.
Roger's comment says, "Hey, if I look your way, I'm coming your way." When we broke the line of scrimmage, he came up man-to-man all by himself. I looked over at Roger, and Roger looked at me. I could barely wipe the grin off my face. The ball was perfect.
Despite several more last-minute comebacks in the 70s, plays that had grown men acting like children, Chuck Noll's Pittsburgh Steelers would be known as the team of the decade, largely because of their 2 Super Bowl wins over Dallas.
In the first Super Bowl we played against them, the Steelers beat up our offensive players.
We had occasions out there on the football field where we should have fought.
Direct snap to Staubach. He barely gets in the way.
But Tom kept saying, "Don't fight, don't fight, don't get back at him." And to this day, there are players that were on our football team that will tell you, we should have fought.
That second Super Bowl with the Steelers was a game that was the worst defeat of my career. We'll go on forever and talk about how we should have won that game.
That's a game that haunts me to this very day. Everybody says Jackie Smith dropped the pass, lost the football game.
First of all, the play should not have been called. It was a goal line play. I mean, Coach Landry called it by mistake. The play was sent in, and we don't even have the people in there. And Jackie, to this day, gets the criticism, and it's not right.
I'd like to line them up again today. At our age now, to play them again, we'd probably beat them.
They were not a better football team. We're the best football team in the world.
Thomas Henderson, who arrived in Dallas with a so-called Dirty Dozen in 1975, continued the Cowboys' legacy for attracting troubled stars. In the early 70s, it was Dwayne Thomas bucking the system at Super Bowl VI. 7 years later, it was Henderson using cocaine on the sidelines in Super Bowl XIII. To this day, he believes he's the best linebacker to wear a Cowboys uniform.
I take credit for putting Randy White into the Hall of Fame because as a linebacker, he just didn't compare.
Thomas, when he was here, he was too lazy to work. He always had something he got out of practice for.
He was cut by the Cowboys less than a year later. At the time, he was bitter and angry towards head coach Tom Landry. But like all players from his era, those feelings have grown into a deep respect for the man in the hat.
I rejected every notion of him, his morality, his Christian faith. But today I try to emulate as much of him as I can. I want to be like Tom Landry. I learned a lot about football from Tom Landry, and I learned a lot about some other things in life from Tom Landry. And I didn't really know I was learning them at the time.
It's like when you were a kid and your mom disciplined you and telling you things over and over again. If you heard it once, you heard it 100 times. You can't tell him too much. I can't thank him enough for the 14-year experience I had with him.
While Landry would coach another 10 years, the man who brought him his victories on the field would announce his retirement on March 31st, 1980. The first golden age of Cowboys football would end with his decision.
It's been a lot of good ones. And there'll be many more good ones. But I thank the Cowboys, and I'm retired.
2 years after his retirement, Staubach would have second thoughts about his decision to leave the game. The competitive juices were still flowing when he watched Dwight Clark make the catch in San Francisco. Roger Staubach was standing at the 10-yard line that day in street clothes. Tony Martinez, Channel 8 Sports.
If the Cowboys had managed to just win one of those Super Bowl games with the Steelers, history might have treated this team a little bit better. Only 5 players are in the NFL Hall of Fame, and that doesn't seem right. When you consider that in the decade of the 70s, the Cowboys won 5 conference titles, 2 Super Bowls, and never had a losing record. When Roger Staubach retired in 1980, it was the end of an era in Dallas. Hard times were coming for the city and the football team. Stay with us. In order to enjoy the 90s, you have to suffer through the 80s. That's next.
To been in those shoes, you know, was a great opportunity for me, a great experience. I just hope that I'm remembered as one of the Tom Landry Dallas Cowboys.
For 20 straight winning years, in the 80s, the winning stopped. Cowboys fans had become complacent by then. But by the end of the decade, there wasn't a complacent Cowboys fan in the state of Texas. Here's Susie Woodhams.
80, 81, 82, it was a fairy tale existence for a quarterback. I mean, I actually started believing I was that good.
The last vestiges of the Roger Staubach era flickered out with one more remarkable comeback in Danny White's first season. Although he would lead the Cowboys to 3 straight NFC title games, his legacy would be determined at the 1981 championship against San Francisco.
Danny never really had that magic that Roger had. The game against San Francisco put a damper on Danny's career.
I don't have nightmares about it because I will go to my grave believing that Joe Montana was trying to throw that ball into the bleachers, and he underthrew it, and Dwight Clark intercepted it.
He's a better passer than that. I think what happened was he was trying to throw it up in the nickel seats, and he was off balance, and that's why the ball hung on it.
That kind of was a pendulum right there. You know, San Francisco kind of went up after that game, and Dallas, we kind of went down after that game.
Eddie DeBartolo Sr. said, this team we beat yesterday, this Dallas team, they call themselves America's team, or we beat them yesterday. Well, why shouldn't we be America's team if we beat America's team?
The next few years, when things started to kind of fall apart and we had a lot of injuries, and I was responsible for the one time when the photographers actually caught Tom Landry completely out of control.
Nobody's going to move. And they didn't make it.
think he thinks they're going to snap the ball. He's going, no, no.
I audible to a slant 36. That was when Landry was on the sideline screaming, no, Dad, no, no.
Big opening for Tony Dorsett. Look out, he's got great speed. 99 yards and a half.
In 1983, Tony Dorsett raced 99 yards for a touchdown.
He's in bounds. Can you believe that?
And in 1985, the Cowboys won the NFC East title for the final time in the Landry era.
We felt like that was going to be a year that we were going to win a Super Bowl. Little did we know that we'd be knocked right out of the playoffs first game.
When the USFL folded in 1986, Herschel Walker joined the Cowboys. But the dream backfield of Walker and Tony Dorsett never materialized. It's taken Dorsett 13 years to admit the biggest mistake of his Hall of Fame career.
If I had to do it all over again, I don't think I'd go to Denver. I was just being a little vindictive, I guess, in some regards. I just felt hurt. But, yeah, I should have retired. I mean, I'm a Cowboy to the day I died.
Dorsett departed amid claims he had lost a step. The same accusation facing Tom Landry.
I've decided to go with posterity in this game. Posterity.
For people to have said that he'd lost touch with the game is not true whatsoever. It's the players, and you always got to have the players.
We were breaking down the film, and we had run a particular pass coverage 38 times. And I was putting all 38 together, and I was analyzing it, and then I was going to go in and make a report to Coach Landry. I could only find 37 of them. So I went in and I said, Coach, I know we ran this play 38 times, but I've only been able to find 37 of them. He said, well, what are you in here for? I said, well, I thought we won't talk about maybe the 37. He said, we ran 38 times to him. I said, well, yes. And he said, well, go find 38 and then come in. We'll talk about it.
I remember the first words he said to me. It was in Thousand Oaks. I got in a fight. I was hitting the guy with my head. He said, we pay you a lot of money for those hands. Next time, don't use your hands. And he just walks off.
In December 1988, Tom Landry would win his 270th and final game of his career. It would come against his old rivals, the Washington Redskins.
It was just a great coaching effort, not only from Landry, but from all of our assistants. So that game was very, very special for us, and we felt that he deserved the game.